I've got my headphones, and I've got my coffee. Espresso or espresso? I leave out the X personally. I've never understood why some people leave it in. I have in my hands a new Apple product, which means there are literally thousands of reviews about these new AirPod Max headphones already on YouTube and the wider internet reviewing these things. But I'm a wedding photographer and I don't have a wedding for at least a few more months. And I'm just excited to talk about a new product that I've had for a few days now. Just to give you a little bit of background about how familiar I am with kind of prosumer/professional headphones, I brought a pile of headphones I've accumulated and sort of evolved through over the years. One second. I'll start with my bread and butter sort of studio headphones, which are the really affordable, fantastic ATH-M50X by Audio-Technica. These are generally what I wear if I'm recording a song and I don't want too much bleed to go into the mic. They're really, really great for just casual listening, but they're not wireless, no noise canceling, no fancy features whatsoever. Stepping up from there, I've actually owned a few of these over the years as they've had a lot of sales and they've become more and more affordable. They don't have noise bleed like transparency, but they do have active noise canceling. They are the Bose Quiet Comfort something. I think they're just called Quiet Comfort 35. I can't quite remember, but I absolutely love these headphones. I've traveled with them. I use them for years. They're rock solid, and I love, my favorite feature is this. It's exactly how they fold up and pack. And my biggest complaint with the AirPods Max is how they don't do that at all. We'll get more into these in just a second. The new Bose Quiet Comfort 35, which are fine, but they don't have that really nice convenient packability like I just demoed with the previous version. They sound good, but the button placement and everything, I actually think they took a little bit of a step backwards with the release of these. I am not that big of a fan, even though they're a lot more expensive than the originals. Stepping on up from there, I've got another reference pair of headphones that are my favorite. I actually own two of these. They're the Sennheiser HD 800s. This is a pair of headphones that I actively, regularly mix actual songs and productions through when I'm recording. And in case you didn't know it, as a hobby, I do a lot of singer-songwriter type of mixing. And I'm not a professional by any means. However, these are certainly professional headphones. I think they clock in around $2,000. I've had them for a while now, so I can't quite remember. But these are known for being particularly transparent and true to the audio source. And then one of my personal favorite headphones, which I'm most going to compare to the Apple headphones, are the Neurophones. These were a Kickstarter campaign that went really viral. They've got these little inner ear speakers / microphone that actually map an EQ graph of your ear when you first set them up. And then by software, it tunes exactly what you're hearing based on your unique hearing signature. I absolutely love these, but the biggest drawback with these is that because this thing sits in your ear, after an hour or two, it becomes very uncomfortable to listen. But it is incredibly good audio overall, awesome noise canceling, transparency as well. Those have the transparency feature. Now, being an owner of a lot of other Apple headphone type products, I do have a couple sets of the Pros, the AirPods Pros. I've got a bunch of the older AirPods that I absolutely love. I had to buy and at least try the new Max headphones. Right out of the box, I hated how they were packaged. And what's unfortunate is you'll hear a lot of reviewers talk about the case. It's a really nice, high quality case, but the last thing I want to have to keep up with when I'm traveling with headphones or just really in my everyday use, the last thing I want to keep up with is the case for any critical function that it serves. And it seems like the only way to get these to truly power down is by having them in the case like this. And it almost becomes like a little handbag or a purse or something. But I really don't like that idea. Now, I haven't had a huge issue with battery life. They seem to be holding up pretty great over the past few days, but it's kind of annoying to know that they're not truly off unless they're sitting in this goofy little case that is not very packable. There's no way to condense this down into anything smaller, and I really don't like that. A few things about the build. Excellent build quality. And if you've ever owned one of those really fancy office desk chairs with like the mesh butt and back areas, it's definitely got that kind of material here on the top. Seems like a very similar weave in the actual headphones. And wearing these is incredibly comfortable. They are by far the most comfortable pair of headphones I've ever owned. The biggest thing I can point to as a drawback is that this is like really nice metal and it clicks and clinks very easily. If they're not sitting like this, which is probably how you usually have it, but if they're not sitting like that, you get this really loud clicky clacky noise and it just feels even if they do hold up over time, it feels like they're probably going to develop a crack or at least significant wear where there's meat. And that's not the feeling I want in a nearly $600 pair of headphones. I personally like my headphones to have extreme packability. I want these. I want this, where I can like fold them in on themselves in whichever weird way, whether the manufacturer intended it or not. I want them to collapse in on themselves and be so small that I can throw them in my bag and also have confidence that if the material does touch itself, this is more of a plastic material and it works infinitely better, in my opinion. It doesn't have a perceived super premium feel like actual aluminum or whatever this material is. You know, it doesn't feel like I'm going to destroy them. Apple should have considered that a little bit more in their design. I'm guessing they mostly intended for these to be sitting really fancily off to the side of your desk and rarely, you know, traveled with. But I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. I would love for them to have a rotation point here so they could fold in on themselves. Yeah, you definitely can't do that. And otherwise, the build quality is pretty good and rigid. It doesn't feel like they're gonna fall apart. And like I said, the actual sitting on your head, they are incredibly comfortable. Okay, so I tend to have pretty sensitive ears when it comes to noise canceling. When that's engaged on a lot of headphones, if I don't actively have music playing, I tend to feel a little pressure on my inner ear, and I can actually feel a little like queasy in a way. It just throws off my balance strangely. I don't know if that's unique to me or if anybody else has that issue, but it's definitely more pronounced on these headphones than anything else. I'm not doing any scientific measurement with all this, but it probably indicates that it has more intense noise canceling than other headphones, which a lot of people would see as a benefit. And this is not a problem when I'm actively listening to music or watching a movie or something. But I will say, this is the first pair of headphones when you have the transparency mode on. You just tap this nice chunky button right here to turn on and off transparency and do a few other features. And I love that they went with actual buttons. I do not like little touch panel, touch sensitive interfaces for my headphones. I want like a tactile, clean response. But with the transparency mode turned on, like it is right now, there are like 6 microphones surrounding this outer shell. And if they rub on anything like a jacket coat or your fingers touch them, and literally just walking down the hall in your house, you'll hear gusts of wind that I find a little bit distracting. The transparency feature has existed in the Neurophones, which I always loved and were fantastic with traveling because you may need to like tap it to hear the, a gate announcement at an airport or something. All of this is pre-pandemic days, obviously. Yeah, I really like the transparency implementation on these because I wouldn't feel or touch. I'm not even sure where the microphones are on this. I think they're somewhere around the perimeter. The other aspect of transparency on these that I really like is that when you engage it, it actually ducks whatever you're actively listening to, which means it lowers the volume while transparency is bleeding through. So it's assuming that if you have transparency on, you aren't fully invested in what you're listening to and you want to hear your greater environment more. I would love to see Apple do that in software, at least as an option. Just if you have transparency mode on, what you're listening to keeps playing, but at a lower volume. And then when it's back into active noise canceling, everything is returned to its previous volume. That's something they could fix over software and would be a much better implementation. The overall sound, before I made this video, I wrote up little comparisons of like how each set of headphones sound. I'm not gonna put you through that, and it's really subjective in a lot of ways anyway, but overall I say these sound excellent. They aren't reference material at all. They definitely do the smile curve in EQ somewhere in there. I would say specifically the 40 to 50 hertz range in EQ is super hyped. It's like they took a really narrow Q band and just juiced it big time. And you hear stuff that is in the mix that you maybe wouldn't hear in other ways, but it is definitely hyped in a way that you wouldn't want to use these for actual mixing of a song, which is fine. Like these are meant to add a little bit of exaggeration to an EQ curve. That's what I'm looking for in a pair of like everyday listening headphones for sure. The overall weight of these is not a problem. They feel really good. I love the volume knob, although I reversed the direction that it turns up and down in software. The connectivity seemed pretty flawless, but I will say I noticed at least a dozen times where there was a little bit of Bluetooth sort of robotic static and noise in the connectivity. So I'm guessing that's again a software glitch that they'll work out at some point. I was surprised to hear that though. I would think with a much larger interface, they would also have a larger wireless receiver. Look, I'm already getting scuff marks. So that's annoyingly distressing. I've only had these a few days, already getting scuff marks. So again, packability is the biggest weakness with these, which is one of the highest priorities in what I'm looking for in a pair of headphones. I suppose Apple's answer to that would be just buy our AirPods Pro. Like, these are clearly what they want you to be portable with. These are more of a desk situation. I can't wait to fly on an airplane again with these and try noise canceling there, like out in the wider world. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the range. So again, with these being larger, I would think there's a larger set of wireless antennas built into these. So I'm going to play a quick video using music from a song that I wrote, walking from one end of my house to the other. So I do have permission to use this song. I literally wrote and performed it. My house is all one level other than this loft area, and you can see about where it starts to lose connection is where I stop and turn back and walk back. So I'm going to play that now. So it's pretty good. I was expecting it to be ridiculously good, like I could actually get to the other end of my house, but my house is pretty spread out and it's pretty old with a lot of really thick like stone and thick walls and slate ceilings and all this kind of stuff. So it held up reasonably well. I would say about as good as the AirPod Pros. So yeah, the biggest weakness is the overall, any touch point does feel a little scary. It's not that they're fragile, but you want to be careful with them, which is, again, not something I want in a pair of headphones. The packability is practically zero. This is not something I want to throw in a bag, so I'm really going to have to think hard about whether or not I actually want to keep these, because I know I'm going to lose the case. I don't want to have to keep up with the case. In the case, everything seems fine. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the AirPods Max. At $600, it's kind of hard to recommend for the vast majority of people, but if you somehow have the extra money to spend, then go for it. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. Apple keeps touting with the AirPods Pros and now the new AirPod Max, the spatial audio. Spatial audio is different than just stereo listening, where you can have a movie on. With spatial audio turned on, your head movement relative to the phone or the iPad screen, this isn't a feature on Apple TV yet, but I assume that'll come someday, but relative to the device, it will stay centered. So you can move in space like this, and the audio, dialogue, and everything will stay fixed in this point in space. It won't turn with your head, which seems kind of cool. Sounds awesome, but in practice, I find it not that mind-blowing at all. They can kind of make things swoop around you and fake surround sort of simulation, but it's not that mind-blowing. And honestly, the latency is a little bit too long. I don't know where the bottleneck is on that, but when I move my head, sometimes it doesn't perfectly back align to center, and sometimes it takes an extra second or two to like sweep back and recalibrate, which is just enough distraction and annoyance that I tend to keep the feature totally off. That is definitely not a selling point for me in how I use these headphones. But I hope you liked what I had to say. This actually ended up being a little bit longer than I thought it would. Probably wait for these to go on sale if you're not totally in need of a new pair of headphones, but they are probably the most comfortable pair of headphones that I own. So if that's a big issue for you and you're ready to just throw in $600, go for it. As always, thank you so much for your attention, and I'll be back soon. Bye.